Hi, I'm Daniel for Coder Prodigy, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can make optical illusions in Scratch with very nice figures called Moire patterns. So here's how this project is going to look like. You have some animations here on the screen, and you're going to program these kinds of optical illusions here in Scratch. Now, the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is click the link in the description, the first link that you see, which is the link to this project that I share here on the screen. I have a couple of sprites that I've created for you, and we're going to program them to create those optical illusions. And after you've remixed that project into your own profile, go ahead and go to your editor and let's start writing some code. Now, this project contains 3 sprites. It contains a sprite for stripes. And the stripes sprite is a very big sprite that looks something like this with a whole bunch of black and white sprites. And another sprite for circles, which looks something like this. You're going to be able to program your own sprite to draw these things onto the screen itself, and then we're going to draw these things, show them on screen on top of what you draw on screen to create those optical illusions. And for that, we have this invisible sprite over here, which doesn't have any costume, or should I say, its costume doesn't contain anything, and we're going to use this invisible sprite to draw things on the screen in a certain way. Now, in order to be able to draw things on the screen, we need the pen extension for Scratch. So go here at the bottom right and click this icon, and then add the pen extension for Scratch. So click on pen, and this will add the green blocks for pen. And after that, I'm going to click on the invisible sprite, and I'm going to add some code. So I'm going to go to events, and I'm going to drag when flag clicked. So when the flag is clicked, I'm going to make sure that nothing is being drawn on screen. So I'm going to go to pen, I'm going to say erase all. I'm going to set the pen color to, and I'm going to choose black by dragging the brightness slider all the way to the left. And then I'm going to set the pen size to a certain value. So I'm going to drag set pen size to, and I'm going to set its pen size to 3, for example. Alright, now after I set the pen size, I want this invisible sprite to drag stripes top to bottom from the top of the stage to the bottom of the stage all the way until we cover the entire screen. So I want the invisible sprite to move here at the top left corner of the screen and then draw one stripe, one vertical stripe all the way to the bottom, and then move a little bit to the right, draw another stripe, and so on and so on. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to drag this block, go to X and Y, and I'm going to go to X minus 240, that is the leftmost side of the screen, and Y I'm going to use 180, which is the top side of the screen, so I'm going to move to the top left, and then I'm going to point in direction 180, so I'm going to say point in direction, and I'm going to drag the slider down to 180. So I want this invisible sprite to move to the top left of the stage and then point downwards. Now, I'm going to drag a single stripe, and then we're going to repeat that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to pen, I'm going to say pen down, and then I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to move a number of steps. So I'm going to say move, and I'm going to use 360 steps, that is 180 plus 180. So I'm going to move all the way down to the bottom of the stage. So move 360 steps. And this will create a vertical stripe of color black on the stage. And then I'm going to raise my pen. So I'm going to go back to pen, and I'm going to say pen up. All right. And then I'm going to move minus 360 steps. So I'm going to move back up. So I'm going to go to motion, say move a number of steps. So I'm going to say minus 360. So I'm going to move back. And then I'm going to move a little bit to the right so that I can start another stripe. So I'm going to change X by, and I'm going to use 5 here. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drag this script. These blocks following go to X negative 280 and 180. So just the script that draws the vertical stripe on the screen. And I'm going to move in an open space for you to see how that works. So I'm going to hit the flag, and that sets the pen color to black and moves the invisible sprite all the way to the top left. And then I'm going to click this tiny script So we will see a vertical stripe here at the left of the stage. So look at that, we have our first stripe, and if I hit this once more, we'll have another stripe, and one more, and so on and so on. So we can fill the entire stage with these vertical stripes. Now, if you find the thickness of the pen to be too thick, you can set the pen size to 2 if you want. So I'm going to set the pen size to 2, I'm going to clear, and I'm going to drag and click this over and over. So we have these vertical stripes here on the screen, and we want to repeat that. I don't want to click this script over and over and over again. So I'm going to add a repeat loop, and I'm going to make the computer draw these automatically for me. So I'm going to go to Control, and I'm going to drag a repeat loop, and I'm going to wrap all of these into this repeat block. And instead of repeat 10, I'm going to say repeat 96. Now, why did I choose exactly 96? That is because 96 times 5, the amount by which I move to the right, is exactly 480. And 480 is twice 240 here that I filled into this box. And 240 is the maximum dimension on either the left or the right on the stage. So that's why I chose 96 here. So after I've done that, I'm going to stick the repeat loop after my go to, and the computer will draw the figures automatically for me. So I'm going to hit the flag, and notice how the computer fills the screen with these stripes. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to define a custom block that does this stripe drawing for me at a certain angle. So the 180 direction, I want to customize that. I might want to pick, instead of 180, I might pick 177 or something like that. And look at how the figure would look like. So it will look something like this, with all these slightly inclined stripes. So we're going to do that. I'm going to create a custom block that will give me the option to customize the angle at which I'm rotating. So I'm going to go to my blocks, and I'm going to make a block, and I'm going to name this block draw stripes at angle. And I'm going to add an input that is a variable here, so I'm going to call this angle. Okay, and then I'm going to hit on OK, drag it here, and this entire mini script with go to X whatever and the repeat loop I'm going to place as the definition of this red block. And instead of the script, I'm going to use draw stripes at angle 180, and that will mean the vertical stripes that we saw earlier. So if I hit the flag, the scene is filled with these vertical stripes. Now, I want to be able to draw these inclined stripes, and I want to use this angle parameter here, so I'm going to drag it here, and I'm going to place it where I said point in direction 180. So instead of 180, I'm going to use the angle parameter for the red block. And now I can say draw stripes at angle, for example, 178, and 178 will then be passed here and will be replaced for the angle argument. So now if I hit the flag, notice that my stripes now are slightly inclined. All right, cool. Now I want to show you something. So let's keep these on screen. And now I'm going to click on the stripes sprite, and then I'm going to program it to appear in the center of the stage and respond to my keys. If I press the left or right arrow keys, this will move left or right. So I'm going to go to events, and I'm going to say when flag clicked. And when the flag is clicked, I'm going to move to the center of the screen. So I'm going to say go to X0 and Y0. And then I'm going to also increase its size a little bit because the sprite covers the entire screen, but not quite. So I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to say change size by 10. All right. Now I'm going to go to events, and I'm going to say when a key is pressed, I'm going to say when space key pressed, and I'm going to use the left arrow. And when left arrow key pressed, I'm going to change X by -1. So I'm going to move it to the left. So I'm going to have change X by, I'm going to use -1, and I'm going to right click and duplicate that because I'm going to say when the right arrow key pressed, I'm going to change X by 1. All right, so let's hit the flag, and now our stripes are going to be drawn on the screen yet again. And I'm going to click on this control over here to make the striped sprite visible, and notice the kind of pattern that we see here on the screen. So it's as if we had very thick diagonal lines over here. That is because the things that we drew with the pen from the invisible sprite, they overlap with this sprite, with the stripes sprite, and we get this very interesting feeling of very thick black lines which are diagonal. And now the very interesting thing. Now if I move this big sprite, the stripes sprite, to the left, these black stripes will seem to be moving to the right. So I'm pressing the left key, but notice the illusion that the thick black stripes move to the right, and vice versa if I press the other key. So this is an interference pattern known as the Moire pattern, and these are used for optical illusions. Now, for the striped sprite, I'm going to remove this purple block to change size by 10 because this will increase the size of the sprite over and over and over again as many times as you click the green flag, and I'm going to remove that and I'm going to replace that to exactly set size to 110. And you can play around with the size of this sprite and with the size of the pen and with the angle at which you draw these lines over here on the screen, and you can play around with this illusion if you want. Now I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you how you can draw circles, and these will be something that you probably saw in real life. So I'm going to create another kind of pattern. I'm going to click on the stripes sprite and I'm going to remove that. I'm going to hide it from screen, so I'm going to press this controller over here, and I'm going to click on the invisible sprite. I'm going to drag the red block here in the open space so that we don't draw these lines anymore. I'm going to show you how you can draw circle lines. So you can see how we can have other kinds of illusions when you have lines interfering with circles or circles interfering with circles. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to variables, and I already created a variable for you called radius. The radius is the radius of the circle that we are going to draw, and we're going to draw many circles, one inside of the other. So first, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the radius to a value like 10 or 5, and I'm going to draw a circle of radius 10. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to say go to x0 and y0, so that is in the center of the screen. And then I'm going to change the y coordinate by radius. So I'm going to go here in the middle of the stage, so here in the middle of the screen, and then I'm going to move upwards by 10 points. And then I'm going to draw a circle around the center of the stage. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and point in direction 90, and then I'm going to start drawing. So I'm going to go pen, I'm going to say pen down. So I'm putting my pen on the canvas, and then I'm going to move in a circle position, and here's how I'm going to move in that circle position. I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to repeat exactly 36 times. 36 because the circle has 360 degrees. So I'm going to rotate by 10 degrees at every point, and at the end I'm going to draw a full circle. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to say turn right by exactly 10 degrees, so that in total I have 360 degrees. And still inside the repeat block, I'm going to move a number of steps. So I'm going to add a move block here. But I won't move exactly 10 steps. I will move exactly, and I'm going to use a mathematical formula, which is something that you'll probably learn in geometry and mathematics. And I'm going to use an operator here. I'm going to say 2 times 3.14. You've probably heard about the number 3.14 is the number pi. So 2 times pi times, and I'm going to use another times operator here. So I'm going to say 2 times pi times 10, because that is the size of the radius, but I'm going to insert the variable radius here. So 2 times pi times radius, and I'm going to divide that by 36. So I'm going to go to operators again, and I'm going to have a division operator, and I'm going to place it here. So I'm going to have 2 times pi times radius divided by 36. Now, why did I do that? 2 times pi times radius is the whole length of a circle. That is a mathematical formula. So 2 times pi times radius is the length of a circle with a given radius. And I divided that whole length by 36 because I'm drawing the circle in 36 steps. So I'm going to move this block over here in this rounded hole. Alright, so after I've moved across the entire circle, I'm going to raise my pen. So I'm going to go pen, and I'm going to say pen up. And after that, I'm going to increase my radius by a number like 5 or 10. But first, let's see how this circle will look. So I'm going to set the radius to 10, and then I'm going to move in this circle fashion. So look at how we have a circle here on the screen. And if I have the radius, for example, 30, we're going to have a bigger circle. But notice that these circles are not exactly inside out. I mean, they don't share the same center. That is because the starting point of my drawing is exactly in the middle of the stage. So I'm going to correct that. I'm going to change y by. So I'm going to move it here, change y by, and I'm going to use my radius variable over here. So I'm going to have change y by radius. Now let me hit the flag and clear my screen, and notice that we have a circle of radius 30 with the center exactly in the middle of the screen. If I have the radius, for example, 47, then I will have exactly another circle with the same center with radius 47. Now, the interesting thing is that we can repeat this over and over again. So I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to add a repeat until block. So I'm going to have repeat until, and I'm going to wrap all the blocks after set radius to 47. So I have set radius to 47 or to whatever number here, and then I'm going to have repeat until and all the other blocks inside. And at the end of the repeat loop, I'm going to go to variables, and I'm going to say change radius by, and I'm going to put it inside the repeat loop after pen up. So I'm going to have change radius, and I'm going to say by 10. And I'm going to set the radius to 10 at the beginning, and I'm going to repeat until the radius is exactly 180. So I'm going to go to operators, and I'm going to say repeat until radius is 180. So I'm going to go to variables. I'm going to say repeat until radius equals 180. And this will draw circles with increasing radius, so larger and larger circles until the radius is exactly 180, and then we cover the entire stage. So I'm going to hit the flag now, and I'm going to click this block, and the computer will start drawing our circles. And notice that all of these circles have the same center, and they grow in size up to the point where radius is 180, and that will cover the entire stage. It'll take a couple of seconds. Alright, so this is our figure, and I'm going to create a red block, a custom block, that will decide to draw this figure at a given set of coordinates. So I'm going to go to my blocks, and I'm going to make a block, and I'm going to say draw circles at x colon, and I'm going to add a number here. I'm going to call this x, and then I'm going to add a label, y colon, and then I'm going to add yet another number of text. I'm going to call this y. Then I'm going to hit OK, and this top red block I'm going to put at the beginning of my script. So I can customize where on the stage I want all these circles drawn. Now, instead of me going to x0 and y0, I'm going to use the variables x and y now. Cool. Now, I want you to see what happens when we have two of these figures, one on top of the other, but slightly. So I'm going to go to my main application when flag clicked, and instead of drawing stripes at angle whatever, I'm going to draw circles. So I'm going to have draw circles at x0 and y0, and then I'm going to draw circles yet again, and I'm going to use x0 and y, let's say 7. So let's see what kind of figure we have here. I'm going to speed this up a bit. Alright, so this looks pretty cool. It looks like a DVD or a CD if you've seen one of those. So if you've seen a CD, it looks something like this, of course with colors, and that is because the CDs have these very, very, very tiny scratches on them so that the computer can read them, and these scratches are specifically created so that the computer can read them, but they have this interesting visual effect that they look something like this, of course with colors and all that sort of thing. Now, thankfully, I've drawn this exact thing, this exact circle pattern here in the circle's sprite, which I've hidden so far. And I'm going to drag one of the red blocks outside, so I'm going to remove them. So I only have draw circles at x0 and y0, so I'm going to start that already until we do what we want to do. And I'm going to go to the stripes sprite, the one with the vertical lines, and I'm going to drag all of these scripts and I'm going to move them to the circles sprite. So I'm going to copy those to the circle sprite. I'm going to organize my space a bit, and I'm going to remove the set size to 110% because I don't really need that. So we have 3 small scripts. When the flag is clicked, we go to x0 and y0, and when the left and right arrow are pressed, we move our circles left and right. Now, having clicked on the circle sprite, I'm going to hit on this control to show the sprite on the screen, and now I'm going to start pressing my left and right keys. And notice the kind of effect that we see here. It's like a CD that's shining in the sun. So look at that. We have this optical illusion. And like I said, if you've seen CDs or DVDs in real life, these kinds of visual effects, these kinds of optical illusions, you'll also see there because, in fact, in order to be readable by the computer, CDs and DVDs are scratched so thinly that you will see these kinds of effects with colors too. Now, if you want, you can also experiment, you can play around with the parameters here that we use for the radius. So you can draw more circles instead of the same pattern that we have in the circle sprite. So for example, you can set radius to 5, and then I'm going to say change radius by 5, and you'll have thinner circles inside, and we will get some more interesting visual effects. So now if I hit the left and right arrow keys, notice that the pattern looks a little bit differently. It looks more detailed now. All right, and that is because we drew more circles there. All right, so these look like ripples in the water. And if you overlap perfectly, you'll notice what I mean. All right, now we can have combinations of those. If you choose to draw vertical lines and then you overlap the circle sprite on top of it, you'll get a different kind of optical effect. So instead of draw circles at x0 and y0, I'm going to draw stripes at angle 180. The angle doesn't really matter. You can use 180 to have vertical stripes. So for example, you can do something like this where you have all these vertical lines there, and now you have the circles drawn on top of those. And notice the kind of visual effect that we have there. All right, it's like we're traveling through space. All right, so notice the kind of illusions that you can create with simple lines that you can draw yourself. Now, I'm going to share this project on Scratch and attach the link to the video description. So you can click on that and you can play around with the kind of code that I've written here, and you can play around with these numbers and create your own optical illusions. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and click the like button for me and subscribe to the Coder Prodigy channel. And I'm going to be creating more videos for you if you like this video, and go ahead and comment if you liked it or if you didn't like it, or just let me know what else you'd like me to show you, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. I'm Daniel for Coder Prodigy.